And having that mindset, that kind of determined mindset where you've got, freedom in front of you, but like death on the other side, that will enable you to traverse any obstacle in terms of like privacy is hard, anonymity is hard, there's a lot of learning, but if you have that motivation like that drive towards freedom, that will enable you to overcome those challenges.
What up, Vigilantes? I'm here with Rose from DarkFi. Guess what? I see her in all the cool conferences. Why? Because she's a really cool person. So, Rose, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so on this conference, at the Guns and Bitcoin conference, you talked about DarkFi and what is DarkFi. So, what is DarkFi?
Sure. So DarkFi is probably best described as a general purpose network where you can run anonymous smart contracts. So like to say a little bit more technically, there's like a virtual machine, same as we have on ETH, it's called the EVM. DarkFi, we have another VM, but it's a zk-VM. And there we can run, we compile our zero knowledge proofs into binary code, and then we run it inside the VM. So at this conference, I demonstrated how we could do that with a very simple example proof, which was just a circuit, just simple arithmetic, so like basic math, that I showed the circuit and then I showed how it would run inside of DarkFi. Just to illustrate a little bit, like how do you have a blockchain which is also able of like processing generic programs like apps. So basically on DarkFi, every single app, it has its own what we call a circuit, and these are compiled and these are run into the VM. Basically, that's how it works.
Right on. So something that you've said really stuck with people, and it had to do with Ireland and the forest. Maybe you can share that here with us, because we've been interviewing people and we missed out on that.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So it's something I mentioned at various talks, but basically I make the comparison between encryption and forests, where you have this tree coverage that protects the people inside the forest, and it means that they can, stage defensive activity. They can do sabotage, ambush attacks, but they can also coordinate. They have a safe area where they can speak freely under the protection of the trees. So this is like juxtapositioned to the kind of desert-scape, which is implied by a surveillance-based society, where you have like this totalizing surveillance, and everything is flattened and homogenized and kind of oppressed. And this thing, like, so I compare it to Ireland, where Ireland used to be a place covered in forests, but over the course of British colonization, the forests were cleared. And that was like for a number of reasons. Actually there was profit motive there, because the trees were sold to make ships for the British Navy. But, there was also strategic military dimension, because it was about depriving Irish people of the ability to launch offensives or defensive operations. So that's the comparison I make. And you can see it like in the online world, how when we have a paradigm where everyone is doxxed and everyone's reputation and identity is on the line, they start behaving in this more conformist way.
Yeah, 100%. Like what happened in Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's very creepy and it's very dystopic.
Yeah.
So like anonymity in the online world is necessary for people to have difference of opinion, to have like diversity, but also for people who are vulnerable to be protected. That's the kind of thing encryption enables.
Yeah. So you are in the world of encryption, and what would you recommend for people who are brand new to this and they might be intimidated by this? Like what message would you want them to have regarding this? Because the first thing that comes to mind is that the world of encryption is a nefarious world, a dark world. But in reality, when I am at these environments, everyone is amazing, beautiful, and in pursuit of excellence, in pursuit of freedom.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, people should live in pursuit of freedom. I think that's how that's a good life, you know, a life that's lived in that way. And Cody Wilson, you know, he spoke at this conference under the name Dominique, and he gave a beautiful speech on what he called death athletic, which is he invoked the image of the tightrope walker who's traversing the tightrope between death on one hand and freedom on the other, and at any moment he could fall to his death, you know. And that's the kind of life that he's advocating in which is a life lived in pursuit of freedom. So, you know, I would encourage like normal people, beginning people, to enter into the privacy enhancing landscape with that kind of mindset. And having that mindset, that kind of determined mindset where you've got, you know, freedom in front of you, but like death on the other side, that will enable you to traverse any obstacle in terms of like privacy is hard, anonymity is hard, there's a lot of learning, you know. But if you have that motivation like that drive towards freedom, that will enable you to overcome those challenges.
You know, I'm just, you know, very thankful for the work that you're doing and that you guys are doing. And so what led for you guys to decide to go with zero knowledge proofs? Many cryptographers out there will call it exotic cryptography, and they won't touch it. Like the Monero community, yeah, they are very cautious. That whole community is very, very cautious. And they see projects like that are using and embracing zero knowledge proofs by default, like Pirate Chain and DarkFi, and they're just looking at it from away like, okay, well, it seems like that group, that Monero communities, is much more comfortable with things that are much more battle tested and peer reviewed. So what was it that made you guys say, you know what, we're gonna go with this? Even though people may call it exotic cryptography, and it's newer cryptography that, you know, very few cryptographers fully really understand. Why did you guys choose that?
Yeah. And just a quick note on Monero, and I really do love that community. I think it's the most interesting community in crypto right now. And however, I will note that some of this concern about ZK, some of this conservatism, is fake news. And Monero is already using bulletproofs, which is a kind of zero knowledge.
Exactly, yes.
And Halo 2, the zero knowledge that we're using, actually uses bulletproofs inside of it. So it's like part of the same, it's the same math. So
you're using Halo right now?
Halo 2 is what we're using, and the way that overcomes the trusted setup is actually by using bulletproofs.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very important, like piece of tech that
I'll
that
tell you
Monero
something. When I talk to you and Amir, you guys make cryptography very simple to understand. Most people mystify it, and it's almost as if they're doing it on purpose.
There is a lot of mystification. I think part of the thing is it's the culture of math in general, where like I'm not into math, but you know, I know from Amir and the other people that I'm close to studying math, where there's this culture of you know, something is evident or something is obvious, so I don't need to break it down. Whereas in programming, we make everything very explicit, very simple, you know, easy for other programmers to understand. That's the culture of programming. Math is more obscurist. It has a more aesthetic dimension. It has a more kind of elitist vibe. So there's something going on. There's something going on there, and it's very common in cryptography because of the connection with math and also to academia. But in answer to your other question, you asked about how do we end up at ZK?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, okay, remember, like for example, Halo, right? Halo Arc. This is something that Zcash hasn't implemented yet, and so I assume that the reason why they haven't implemented is because they're waiting on some, you know, audits.
The Halo 2, I'm not sure why. I think they will implement that. I mean, there has been some. I don't know, to be honest. But I will tell you a little bit. I honestly don't know, but I consider Halo 2 safe to use for the simple reason that, you know, we have implemented that all aspects of that algorithm ourselves. So we understand. Not me personally, right? I'm not a cryptographer. I'm not a mathematician at all. But you know, us as a team have gone through this math very carefully, and we essentially have verified that the math is secure. But in relation to
have you guys published this work?
Yeah, it should. There's some. So we built. This is part of the other question. Also, we have implementations of every major zk algorithm on the DarkFi repo because Amir he systematically went through all the zk ones and implemented them in his pursuit of the best, most flexible anonymity primitives available. So it started off. I'll tell you the full story.
Sure, yes.
And maybe Amir told you a version of this story already, but
Yeah, we didn't get into
we didn't get into this. So Amir, he made the dark wallet with Cody Wilson back in 2013. Then they released a beta. Then soon after, he went to Rojava in North Syria, where he was for possibly a year or 2 years. And when he came back, everyone was saying, you should get back to the dark wallet. We need the dark wallet. We need anonymity.
Yeah,
Definitely. And so he was like, okay, dark wallet. But he went back to it, and he realized at that point that CoinJoin is a very weak kind of anonymity because it's got these mix-ins. There's still linkability there. So same issue with the ring signatures on Monero, pretty much. So he saw that problem. He said, okay, I have to find a different alternative. He started implementing all the major algorithms. He wrote a Mimblewimble implementation, found that Mimblewimble isn't anonymous, even though it's claimed to be.
Yeah, that's what we tell people. Yes.
Yes, which is shocking. Some of the misinformation around privacy.
Yeah, definitely.
Really bad. And so he implemented that one. He implemented ring signatures, and he made quite a fast implementation, which had a ring size of 100. He got it optimized. However, he was speaking with other cryptographers, and they said 100, if you're like Sybil attacked, it's not enough. It's still not enough against a state level adversary. You need an anonymity set of much, much higher, much greater.
So excuse me, does this have to do with like being Sybil attack as measured within the vacuum of a lab, or are we talking about Sybil attack taken into consideration of working in the wild?
Right. No, I would say that this is theoretical. Like, we're not talking about a real life situation here. Right. It was just like a more theoretical proposition. Like, what happens even if you have a ring signature of the size 100, what happens if the state decides, let's fill that with 90 or whatever fake transactions? That they have the resources, they could try to do that. So, that was more like theoretical scenario. We don't know exactly what is the number of mix-ins that make it secure against like state level adversary, because we don't have like the proper evidence of that. Like, we don't have any documents of that. But that's really interesting information to have at some point. We don't have it, so these are hypotheticals. But still, we felt like let's try and get more anonymous as we can. And eventually, so Amir then at some point implemented the Coconut credentials that's NIM's using. He implemented one of those. That was when it was starting to look like DarkFi, because he realized at that point you can have these flexible anonymous credentials that you can use not just for private transactions, but also for smart contracts. So that was the earliest DarkFi. It was written in C++. Then basically he came to the realization that zk-SNARKs was the best thing for anonymity because of I spoke about it in Monero conference, logarithmic property of SNARKs, where rather than this linearity, where in Monero, if you double the ring size, you also double the running time. With the zk-SNARKs, it's logarithmic. So if you want to double the anonymity set, it goes from, like in the case of DarkFi, 2 to the power of 32, that's 32 is the height of the Merkle tree, to 2 to the power of 33. That's a doubling, but you can see it's only a logarithmic increase, so it's comparatively much smaller than the linear increase. So it is one of the nice properties of SNARKs. And the other nice property is that because you're doing a mint and burn on the other side, like you create a credential. This is a very simplified way. You know this, but I'll say in case your audience don't. Very simplified way. You create a credential, then you create an encrypted hash of that, which is just you hash it, but you add some random value, so we can't reverse the hash. We create an encrypted hash on one side. That's your mint. On the other side, we do a few checks. Like we create the coin again. It's called the coin the encrypted hash of the thing. We create the coin again. We check it's the same coin that's in the Merkle tree. So we're just making sure everything's fine. And if everything's fine, we reveal the credential. That's the burn. Then that coin is invalidated. It can't be double spent. That's the essential thing of how we achieved the anonymity. It's the sapling payment scheme. It's used on Zcash and Pirate Chain and also DarkFi. So it's nice because that the link is broken. We don't have these inputs and outputs, which make ring signatures linkable and Bitcoin linkable.
So you guys are the first to not have to worry about the trusted setup.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think you guys are.
Probably.
I can't think of anyone else that's doing zk-SNARKs
No trusted setup.
with no trusted setup. So congratulations on
you.
that.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah. Woo.
Bravo! Wow. Okay. I had so many questions going as you were talking.
It was the clap,
Yeah, but it's okay.
finish this off.
Yeah, it's just smart contracts on zk-SNARKs.
I just remembered something I had to.
Sure, yes.
So this is a point that I always kind of overlook in my the way I talk about DarkFi. So the first thing we have is this compiler for zk and this ability to run zero knowledge contracts. What our next step will be is we want to introduce other kinds of techniques that people can use, programmers. So sometimes when you're building anonymous applications, you need to use zero knowledge. Like, for example, you might want to prove that something's in the Merkle tree without revealing it. You can do this kind of ZK type behaviors. But in other cases, you might want to use stuff like Shamir's secret sharing or multi-party computation, where you can split shards of a secret across computers. And then, if you want to build more advanced applications, tricks like these also become in very handy. So what DarkFi ultimately aims to be is like a toolkit where developers can pick and choose, in a very simple way. They just import different tools into their program. So they import the multi-party computation. That will give them a range of flexibility they wouldn't get from using just ZK by itself. And as far as I know, we're the only project which is thinking more holistically about anonymous engineering. We're trying to combine these different techniques, not just ZK, but everything we can get our hands on to make anonymous applications.
Okay, so I knew, because I heard from cryptographers just in passing that it was possible to do smart contracts with zero knowledge. And so how is it possible then? Is it on the ZK packet? ZKP?
Right. I think what you're saying...
I remember hearing that, the packet and something like that. Yeah, I don't remember accurately. But how is it that it is achieved? Because so then that would mean that Pirate Chain has the potential of doing smart contracts on chain.
Pirate Chain would need to add what we have, which is like a VM, virtual machine, something like this. So that's what also ETH has. That's like your shared computer instance.
Okay.
So, it's shared among the computers, and every computer can run these contracts. And the contracts, hypothetically, they could run on your chain. There would need to be adaptations for that. But for example, Zcash as well. They haven't done it yet, but they're planning to switch to Halo 2. And then once they have that, they'll be able to do ZK assets a bit more flexible. And I'm not sure their exact roadmap, but they want to do ZK assets, I think, at some point. Maybe at some later stage, something to do with smart contracts. I don't know what their roadmap is, but maybe. But so if you were to have a VM, you need some other changes. I don't know if you'd have to update to Halo 2.
Yeah, that's their plan, is to update. Pirate Chain as well. They plan to update. Yeah. Well, I'm not part of Pirate Chain. I'm an analyst. I just look at the space. But them as a community,
they're your community. They're also your community. They follow you.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. We analyze the space, and we think they did something very special, in that they did zero knowledge proofs by default.
Yes, which is what Zcash should have done, but didn't.
Yeah. So. Wow, so what's next for DarkFi?
Okay, so the next steps are very exciting to me, because I hope that next year I can go to these conferences again and have a tangible product. I think that would be really fucking cool. So that's my goal. But so before then, the plan is we have a blockchain, we have a prototype, and so we just have to integrate the blockchain into the prototype, and that's what makes a testnet, and then we'll have a testnet. Testnet, we're going to deploy some apps on there. So we're going to have the anonymous DAO running as our first step, because we need that for our own operations. It's going to be like the dev DAO. How do we like fund, Monero has the research grants, for, stuff like that. We start doing that. And once we have that running, give it a few months, or I don't know how long, but some time will pass, and then we can deploy mainnet.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there will be a DarkFi coin.
DarkFi coin has, there will be more information, but basically we're a proof of stake chain, right? So there's going to have to be some kind of coin, but we haven't released any information about that publicly yet. So I would just tell people to stay tuned.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. So, okay. So, in terms of peer review and auditing what you guys do, the network of cryptographers that understand this high level of cryptography is kind of small. So how do you guys plan on increasing that base of contributors?
Well, so one thing we're doing now is just training everyone that we work with in basic algebra. So I, for example, suck at math, really bad. So when I was in school, I fucking hated math. I slept in the class. I didn't do the exams. I didn't see the point. Worst mistake of my life. I've been trying to make up for that mistake for the past 10 years. But anyway, now I have a basic knowledge just from studying high school level algebra repeatedly. So I'm building on that, and after maybe another year of study, I'll start going more advanced into the cryptography subjects. Because our aim is to get everyone to the point where they can at least have a strong intuition about what's going on. So for example, one of the things in ZK, which is a lot of the ZK stuff is just high school math. So for example, you need to understand polynomials are really important. If you understand polynomials, you can actually get pretty far with ZK already. So that's I think a really good way to build a what do we call it? A strong well protected community and source code is to raise your people up, train everyone, not try to keep it an elite thing that only the philosopher gods know about, but actually get everyone involved, all the devs, anyone comes into the community, learning basic algebra, building on that knowledge towards cryptography, and sharing resources with everyone online on how to do that as well. That would be a good first step. And as well as that, we will also engage external auditors,
Right on. All right, guys. So get ready to going back to school. Everyone watching this, get ready. Get on Mathematica, whatever you need to do. And, not Mathematica, but get on start learning math. Get on YouTube. Start learning math. Because she's just called you guys and all of us to step up our game, because we can't rely on these, like you call them, philosopher gods. I mean, it would be cool to get cryptographers that, come look at it, right? That are not hip to what's happening here. But it's important for us to also know what's going on.
There's a really good YouTube video I recommend. It's called Three Brown, One Blue, something like this, or Three Blue, One Brown. Maybe that one. And it does beautiful math animations. It's really worth checking out. And you can definitely learn about polynomials there. But go step by step and start with basic math if you forgot it.
This is awesome. Thank you, Rose, for being with us. I'm very, very happy. And I look forward to everything you guys are doing. If there's a place for the community, for the general layman to follow your work and follow the work of DarkFi and the progress that you guys are making, where can they learn more about what you're doing?
Great question. Good starting point is dark.fi, the website. On there you can find our manifesto. You can also find a link to our GitHub, which is by far the most informative source of information. You can also find a link to our developer chat, which is on Elements. Every Monday, 4 p.m. Central European time, we have an open developer meeting. Everyone is welcome to attend. We also have a Telegram group, which is very low traffic. We just use it for unidirectional announcements. Link to that is also on the website. So dark.fi is probably your best bet. And check us out on Twitter, DarkFi Squad, and we'll keep you posted on the news.
Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Science fiction is a speculative exercise. By speculating, on possible futures, sci-fi expands the space of possibilities. Crypto is an extreme kind of sci-fi because, as well as offering a vision of the future, it also provides the tools to make that future possible. Crypto is currently energized by a sci-fi called Solarpunk. Evolved from cyberpunk, Solarpunk is a utopian vision of the future characterized by its optimism. For solarpunks, the future is bright. Solarpunk casts away the dystopian shadows of cyberpunk and illuminates a world beyond the chaotic horizon. In many of the popular DeFi chains, Solarpunk hackers are creating transparent infrastructures for funding public goods. The shared belief is simple. Public access to a decentralized and transparent financial system will lead to a fairer and more just world. Solarpunk is crypto's conscious mind. It is bright, self-confident, and future-oriented. Yet the counterpart to Solarpunk faith is Lunarpunk skepticism. Lunarpunks are the solar shadow self. They are the unconscious of this cycle. While Solarpunks join DAOs, Lunarpunks prepare for war and build privacy-enhanced tooling to protect their communities. Lunarpunk first came into being as a subset of Solarpunk. It has always preferred encryption over the plain text paradigm offered by Ethereum and similar chains. Over time, the tensions created by Solarpunk tendencies have only multiplied. Lunarpunk has been forced to break away from the Solarpunk legacy and is now asserting its own. In the Lunarpunk imaginary, a conflict between crypto and existing power structures is essentially pre-programmed. Regulation forces crypto underground. Anonymity proliferates. The Lunarpunk vision is rejected as a bearish nightmare. Its foundational conflict, nation-states banning crypto, is dismissed by Solarpunk because it produces fear. The kind of fear that compels people to grab their money and run. The optimism of Solarpunk has become synonymous with bull market cycles, while pessimism is associated with the bear. Lunarpunk offers something beyond this simple oscillation. It is a moment of insight between market cycles, a glitch in the hologram where the source code shines through. Solarpunk fragility. Fragile, something that breaks when shaken. Anti-fragile, something that absorbs shocks and becomes stronger. Consider the following. Crypto's core innovation is a diptych. It empowers users while equally diffusing its attack surface. User empowerment is negatively correlated with fragility. The more empowered a user base, the more anti-fragile a network becomes. User empowerment and system anti-fragility are in positive feedback with each other. But this cycle also runs in reverse. In a transparent system, users are exposed. If the external environment turns hostile, this information can be weaponized against them. Faced with persecution, users will opt out, triggering a descent into fragility. The Solarpunk mindset is essentially optimistic. Transparency in Solarpunk systems is the spirit of optimism projected outward. By building transparent systems, the Solarpunk says, "I have faith that the law won't turn against me." Its insistence on optimism prevents it from preparing for the worst-case scenario. This is the core of Solarpunk fragility. Dark optionality. Anti-fragility hinges on unknowability. The future is dark. It cannot be predicted with meaningful certainty. Optionality has been called the weapon of anti-fragility due to its ability to leverage this darkness to its advantage. Optionality assumes your prophecies are wrong most of the time. Being wrong is cheap, while being right is disproportionately rewarding. Lunarpunk integrates optionality because it thrives in the worst-case scenario. If the Lunarpunk thesis is wrong, the supercycle continues. If it's right, crypto enters its next phase armed with the appropriate defenses. Being well defended means going dark, using cryptography to protect the identity and activity of users. A prophecy. Anonymity is first compelled into being as an adaptation to mass surveillance, but its existence also further justifies surveillance efforts. This is a positive feedback loop that implies anonymity and surveillance are fated to escalate. Left running long enough, the loop triggers the next phase in the Lunarpunk's prophecy, what is known as the regulation trap. In this phase, governments use the increase in anonymity as a scapegoat to leverage the full extent of their power against crypto. Yet, by cracking down on crypto, hostile powers simply further its justification. Crypto's utility will be correlated with the extent of the crackdown. It expands disproportionately with each received blow. The lunar cycle. The sun is both a symbol of nature and of tyranny. Through its insistence on transparency and identity, Solarpunk inherits the dual characteristics of its central symbol. Solarpunk systems are desert landscapes in which users are endangered and exposed. Lunarpunk is more like a forest. A dense cover of encryption protects tribes and offers sanctuary for the persecuted. Wooded groves provide a crucial line of defense. Lunar landscapes are dark. They are also teeming with life. Lunar tech is owned and operated by the people themselves in service of their freedom. The lunar cycle upholds democratic techniques against authoritarian technology, freedom against surveillance, and diversity against monoculture. By favoring transparency in its systems, Solarpunk is tragically engineering its fate. Surveillance, the mechanism of authoritarianism, is bound to the Solarpunk destiny. For Solarpunk to succeed, it must integrate the Lunarpunk unconscious. The only hope for Solarpunk is to go dark.